In our rapidly evolving digital economy, corporations confront a new landscape in which public sentiment and social discourse have become critical shapers of firm legitimacy and sustainability. As digital platforms amplify the voices of stakeholders worldwide, companies must learn to strategically engage with this shifting landscape to secure their long-term viability. At the Institute of International Business and Governance 7th Academia Industry Exchange, hosted by Hong Kong Metropolitan University, Professor Daphne Yiu from Singapore Management University explores how firms can navigate the complex interplay between global stakeholder sentiments, digital spheres, and the development of sustainable business models in the midst of the digital economy.
Today, I'm going to share with you the shareholder sentiments. Particularly, I really want all of you, now really popular word is to get an immersive experience. So in the next 45 minutes, I really want all of you to go into this journey with me to understand more about what sentiment plays a role in managing global stakeholder and firm relationships, and in particular, to generate value for the stakeholders such that the firm can capitalize on competitive advantage to sustain in the midst of the digital economy. That is the theme of my talk today. Remember this photo, and I will have this again at the last of my presentation. What you feel about it. Now, to start with, what is emotion and how emotions are related to our lives? These are some of the quotes from people that you know, from people that you feel admire. Let's start with Albert Einstein. The finest emotion of which we are capable is the mystic emotion. Another one, we all live at the mercy of our emotions. Our emotions influence and shape our desires, thoughts, and behaviors. And above all, our destiny. Believe it or not, agree or not. Another one, how you react emotionally is a choice in any situation. The key word is situation. I want you to keep that in mind. Finally, from artists, from Van Gogh, let's not forget that the little emotions are the great captains of our lives, and we obey them without realizing it. Keyword, obey. Counterintuitive? You start to question about it. These are some of the so-called word of the year. The first one is back in 2016. What is that? Xenophobia. My focus of this is why this become the word that people search over and over again in that year. Related to Donald Trump? Who knows? But that's not in international business. It's really about something called insider and outsider divide. Bear that in mind again, the identification. The other word in 2022, gaslighting. We all experience what we call the COVID-19 pandemic, when everyone, including your grandmother, your relatives, your parents, your daughters, are all in the same household. How are we going to release our emotion? But this is a psychological manipulation of a person. Why these two words are related to people's behaviors and their sharings? They are all related to our sentiments and emotions. How about public sentiment? That is a quote I use for the 2022 publication at Journal of International Business Studies. I use this quote from Abraham Lincoln. Public sentiment is everything. This is a public thermostat that gives the range of permissible actions that will grant legitimacy to the government and to the politicians. There's different polls. We always receive phone call You may decline it, but you may also look at how public feel and also have their opinion on company policy, on public policy, and even in international business, across country issues. How about related to our daily consumer behavior, purchasing behavior? University of Michigan has this consumer sentiment, and PwC is another example, always do survey for about how sentiment improve for some but not others. How about news? What's happening? There's a rise of nationalist consumer sentiment. There's religious consumer sentiment. And we also have a lot of experience and sharing about emotions and how emotions change our behaviors. I'm not exaggerating the role of emotions, but I want to rethink about in our daily life from this morning till now, whether emotions of yourself or sentiments of others may have an influence on how you think and how you act. Well, I want you to experience how many isms are there. For even some of the firms like Body Shop, the slogan, what it put on the website is activism is their DNA. So firms nowadays, especially multinational corporations, are under strict scrutiny of public activism. So this is how I want to start with the talk. After posing so many phenomena, that you may agree that we need to care about this, and there's an urgency for understanding it deeply, such that you can teach to your students and you can formulate policies for your company and even turn it become your strategic sustainability. That is how my talk will begin, with something that will consume your brain power. But once you exercise that, I hope you can get a sense to take away from today is about what is sentiment and what is social sentiments, and how would that be related to global stakeholder activism at this era in the midst of digital economy. So sentiment is all related to emotion. And there are different disciplines from really physiological to neurological. But in social science, in business, my focus and my team's focus is more on the cognitive aspect, the sociological and cognitive aspect of sentiment. But strictly speaking, sentiment is defined as people's opinions, appraisals, attitudes, and emotions toward entities. It's not only about emotions, but it's about how you think and something you know already, but it's just because it's not triggered. And that's why another word here is there must be an entity and target that trigger your emotion. Or can be an object, can be a news, can be a talk right now. That's part of my job to trigger your emotions now, okay? What is social sentiments? Social sentiments or collective sentiments are collectively shared emotional dispositions that are socially constructed, one keyword, socially constructed, and involve feeling and emoting toward a target entity, process, or behavior that are shared by a group of actors. So now we are not talking about individual, how you feel versus what the one sitting next to you feel, but we are talking about all the 50 people here, how we collectively feel. That is my aggregation of this power of construct, social sentiments and collective sentiments. And I'm going to some more deeper in the underpinnings of social sentiments. A very well-cited piece is Durkheim's theory of collective effervescence. The other is about how social sentiments are related to communication, especially to digital communication. And finally, it's another aspect, which is from Turner and Stats, talking about sense making and sense giving. First, the theory of collective effervescence talk about two important notions. One, the society exercises a moral pressure that's related to what we believe that is right or appropriate, or what is not appropriate. So that is moral pressure inside that over its member and puts their sentiments in harmony with the situation. Think about that. If now here is a funeral and one of you keep laughing, is it in harmony? No. So all the others will have the moral kind of pressure, maybe in our body gesture or even verbal, to condemn this behavior. That's why it takes into the second one. Because we are reinforcing this harmony between our emotion sentiments with the situation, over time, this will become a social solidarity, something we want to maintain. By the way, emotion, later I will talk about that, it's not something trigger only, but we as human beings, we are able to regulate it. Okay, the regulation from this very, very influential piece. But how would that be related to so-called institutions? Because in my study of research, I focus a lot on social and informal institutions. And this is something I find that will give contribution to the theory of informal institutions. So social sentiments is central to social structures and processes, and in itself significant to the constitution of institutions. So because we reinforce our behavior, our mood, our emotions with the situation, over time, this will become an institution, an order that we all will maintain. And finally, this is the source of power from all the collective beings here. If anyone violates, we will try to transform it or orient it back to the institutional order. Or before there is an institution established, we will construct, interact, reinforce to make it become a new institutional order. So think about in your handphone, talk about those emoji. Before it didn't exist, but now it become a norm. So that is the creation of new institutional order. So these are the underpinnings. Keep in mind about power, the moral pressure, and institutional building and maintenance. And I'm going to go into the 5 major distinctive characteristics of social sentiments. Why is it unique as compared to other informal institutions like culture, like guanxi? The distinctive characteristics include, first, sentiment-based social institutions. In fact, this is something embedded in our society, in our belief system, and during affective dynamic and can be mobilized quickly. That's one thing. The other thing is, it is linked to the normative and cognitive background assumptions, aligned with our values and belief and the norms. Third, a source of power and legitimacy. The key word is legitimacy. That poses constraint on the range of permissible actions that are perceived as acceptable to the public. By the way, these are all from the political science literature. But in business, it applies also to multinational enterprises or any firm when dealing with multiple, maybe conflicting institutional and also stakeholder different values and beliefs as well. And then fourth, that is really how it is related to digital economy in my work. Because if all of us think about the same thing, but we don't interact, it won't generate the power. It won't generate the legitimacy. Just like in the past in Hong Kong, every Sunday, noon, in Victoria Park. There's a forum. People interchange and discuss. And now we don't need that physical forum, but in digital format as well. Any forum, any group in your WeChat or WhatsApp, you can interchange. So that requires a social space for social construction and symbolic interactions. And finally, how does that really exaggerate and also manifest in day-to-day business activities is that there are so many controversial or a grant that lacks legitimacy. So this is a social cycle context in which social sentiments are aroused. What has been done? In legal studies, when studying social sentiments, the studies show that punishment of murder cases is strongly influenced by social climate. That's how media becomes so important in influencing how the public view about the punishment by the court. In finance and economics, I'm sure you all will look at those kind of fluctuations of investor sentiments. In marketing, consumer emotions, consumer conditions, brand love, all these are also about how a firm uses the brand to arouse emotion and brand loyalty and also brand love. International business, by the way, I can't find many studies, and that's how I personally aim to contribute to this line of research, that we look at public sentiments, but before that, there's also studies on national animosity. Okay, we go to, I would say, the highlight of this theoretical model is really what I call a trio model, and how we create the logical linkages among social sentiments, among the discourse, the space for discussion, and finally, the impact on firm behavior and practices. So we start with this very basic model. There are three cues in this kind of relationship. First, there must be an object appear. For example, a new product. And in my study, it's talking about inward mergers acquisition by the Chinese firm in the United States, which is a very ambitious and aggressive strategic action. And this situation cues or the target or the object will arouse emotions and sentiments. And that leads to another process here is on the discourse, the interaction, how people think about that and how they exchange their views, or how firm actually can proactively shape the views as well. And finally is how that will impact firm behavior, the motivational cues. Because in addition to striving for profitability, firms actually are motivated by gaining legitimacy or social approval. What these three components interact for situational cues, which is composed of attitudes, opinions, emotions, and targets. Social sentiments are cultural patterns of feeling and emoting that will energize the discourse and mobilize behaviors. That is the underlying mechanism. And the other is about the discourse. Through our discourse, we actually have sense-making, sense-giving, social construction that legitimize sentiments and behavior. And what we see finally, the observed outcome, is about firm behavior and practice. The mechanism is how it will materialize discourses and sentiments. Finally, this will get to firm legitimacy. So here I'm matching the 5 unique characteristics and explain why host country stakeholders' sentiments become a scenario to study the effect of social sentiments. In international business, we all know nowadays in recent years, the global context is highly relevant with the rise of geopolitics, trade wars, nationalist tension, social movement, etc. That's why international business, no matter this is in the host country and also in the home country as well, whenever there is a new foreign actor initiate a strategic action, that becomes a target for the social stakeholders, in this case, it's the host country stakeholders, to pay attention to. And second is about the insider-outsider divide, about xenophobia. There are so much cultural differences between home and host countries that people in the host countries may have bias and stereotype towards those coming from the rest of the world. Foreign entities used to suffer from liability of foreigners. From those emerging economies, there's an additional liability of emerging as well. Globalization now is not just talking about in and out, but can be digitalized. Everything can be diffused on the internet and influence firms' actions immediately and instantly. And finally, its foreign entities' action is highly sensitive and easily arouse host country sentiments and also the stakeholders and admin and activism. So this is a model I and my team developed, is to look at the interplay among foreign entities, host country sentiments, and also the systems of discourses. So basically, we advocate a new concept in international business. So host country sentiments are socially constructed and collectively share attitudes and emotional dispositions among host country constituents toward foreign entities in the local marketplaces. So what we think and also what we develop is that there are three mechanisms about when a firm initiates a foreign entry. In our case, it's the Chinese firms acquire US firm in the United States. That will arouse sentiment, stimulate the local stakeholders to discuss about it, and also to post their opinions on that. And once they impose that with the discourse for societal communication, not only mobilize the sentiment competence is the power, that is an energy, some kind of moral pressure and social pressures to exert to the foreign entity in the United States. Look at Wall Street journals, how they talk about the acquisition by Chinese firms. So this is an energy, what we call a sentiment competence. And finally, it's going through this legitimation process, harmony. Ultimately, when the acquisition deal is completed, it refers to there is a harmony between the host country stakeholders and the firm's identity in the host country. So that is how, we developed this, and to show you something more about social sentiment. You may see, okay, the same argument apply in national culture. What we want to highlight about the uniqueness of sentiment is our feeling will be gone in seconds. And how we think about the issues is really context-specific and issue-specific. So this is something we want to highlight. It's about when we study sentiment, a new paradigm shift here is to look at the patterns of the changes. So social sentiments dynamics are characterized by granularity. That is something granular, very proximate, close to the context. And we focus on the changes in pattern. And in this way, we are looking at not only the per second things, but we are looking at the time distance frame, which I would talk about these three other constructs in our paper. What we suggest is about sentiment volatility, the fluctuations in a cycle. That is the trajectory, temporal fluctuations in sentiment intensity. So of course, the more fluctuated the sentiment, the less likely the foreign firm will gain legitimacy because there is bipolar views. And the other construct, what we developed, this is about something in mathematics and also in physics as well. It's called wavelength. This is really important. Remember, sentiment is not only aroused, but it will go through the social construction and interaction process. And that's why it is important to get to know how the positive sentiments when they go down, and someone or some other stakeholders, or even including the firm itself, may try to push it up again. That is about the wavelength meaning. That is not only up and down, but talking about the cycle of from up to down and up again. And this refers to the more positive or the higher the wavelength is not good, but the shorter the wavelength, the more energy it will be aroused, because it can lead the discussion back to the positive. And that will help firms to be more legitimate in the action. And finally, when we discuss about an issue, actually we'll have different kinds of emotions and opinions and attitudes. So that is about how we also look at the sentiment augmentation. That is the interactions with different sentiments. So in our case, we will look at the sentiment toward acquirer and sentiment toward deal, as well as sentiment toward all the deals from China. So this is our results. The first is about sentiment toward deal, toward the acquirer, and toward the inward investments from China. They all have positive impact on the completion of the deal. And for sentiment volatility, we find a mixed findings here. Sentiment volatility toward inward investment from China has negative impact, but what we find is that sentiment volatility toward deal, which is contrast to our prediction, is positively related. And then for wavelength, we got the support that it is negatively related to the deal completion. And finally, for the sentiment augmentation, we find that the inward investment will have positive impact with the sentiment toward the deal. Now, I want to shift to our practice from what we know about social sentiment, host country sentiments, and then back to, are they all negative? How firms actually can strategize around social sentiments. So this is how I want to share a little bit about some of the recent observations of the business models that actually capitalize on stakeholder sentiments. Remember the close relationship between social discourse and social sentiments. When there is a systems of discourse aided by digital media, it will have the power of language. The power of language, which is the social construction and interaction process, that will generate social sentiment. And firm now will do a lot of social sentiment analysis. And finally, how would that translate into the strategic analysis? What I want to highlight is sentiment analysis is we draw on textual data and then to figure out how many positive or negative words they are, and then turn it into polarity score. And for sentiment analysis, especially in marketing and also in new product development, is looking at different areas. The first one is more descriptive, looking at the identification or emotion detection sentiment analysis. Another thing is the aspect-based sentiment analysis. It is more focused on particular part of the service. Then go deeper to fine-grained sentiment analysis that help to study like the ratings and reviews by the customers. And finally is the intent-based sentiment analysis. That is to look at the intent of customers, whether they're looking to buy the product or browsing around. These are really focusing on the consumer behavior and consumer analysis. But strategists should go beyond that and capitalize on how social sentiment analysis can be translated into gaining customer and product insights, like the co-creation community, open innovations belong to this type. And the other is to look at competitor analysis, competitor surveillance, brand management and reputation building. And finally is the stakeholder and admin and crisis management in case there's scandal. This is very interesting. It's an analysis, a sentiment analysis to look at Harry Potter series, to look at all the different emotions from sadness, surprise, trust, disgust, to look at all the 8 books to do the series. And now I want to focus here about how firms develop their business model. It is important to have three principles here. First, understand in real time. Second, identify the trends and threats. And most importantly, from governance and sustainability perspective, is enhance and preempt. This is a very successful model about how companies nowadays develop their business model based on social sentiments, which is called social commerce. If you look at Instagram, Shein, Pinduoduo, these all are capitalized on the business model of social commerce. And then highlight some of this, like social media, community. They are generating collective sentiments and emotions. Feedback. They're just not selling a product, but they would like the community members to give feedback. And finally, that will create a viral effect that will generate more noise, more awareness, more interactions, and more influence to buy the products. So in a nutshell, this is not something new. In marketing, back in 2010, they already talk about social commerce, but not until the era of digital economy that really help firms to change their business model or transform their social model. So this is from a Forbes article detailing what is social commerce, which I want to highlight is something content-driven, experience-driven, and finally, is network-driven. That is how they sustain the emotions and sentiments, sustain the social constructions and interactions for more purchase. And there are different models here, and this is an example from Pinduoduo. They talk that they are combining Disney and Alibaba or Amazon together. Is the gamification model. So what they do is they will form social groups. That's why the focus is on the team's purchase. So what they do is after you read a book, he may post a review and then to the rest. And then he may say, okay, in 1 week, if you buy it, you can get a discount. So all the others will have the goal. This is a game, okay? We want to get a discount. So this is how they generate the emotions, the sentiments, but also the trust. Because we are in a social group with the same social identity. And with more users, influencers, and that will generate the scale economies. So this is very successful company that really break a new market space in China. And if you look at the functions of social media over the years, it's not up to 2023, but I think if you update that, you will find that most of the social media platform or apps, they now have the purchase functions. Beyond that, I would say the first step. And some companies are doing a further step. Look at this. Microsoft used sentiment analysis of tweets with Power BI, and they are generating very affordable prices for doing sentiment analysis for their clients. And more of that is Amazon. They developed Amazon Comprehend, which basically, again, is do more advanced sentiment analysis. And then this is about how healthcare AI is now doing. With the AWS system, what they can do is really to detect the data from the consumers. And this is how Alexa is doing. You can see the power. When you talk with Alexa, Alexa will tell you that you may get a flu. And when you feel happy, unhappy, you may feel your blood pressure may be fluctuating. The more data you got, the more they can do the analysis with big data and then customize the services for you. And then when you click in Amazon, they will see what kind of prescription you may need. So this is how another aspect that is related to digitalization is there's so many devices nowadays that will facilitate voice input. By the way, not visual so far, okay, with camera, okay? But voice, because voice can arouse cognition, affection, and emotion. They will know what you need. And the other thing is conversation. So it's not just an alarm, but something that you talk, and Alexa will tell you what to do next. Conversation is important because it facilitates social interaction. And the interaction ability is to affect and be affected. And finally, why human-like? Why you can choose the voice that you like to talk with. That is how they will get engagement. Identity embedded, there's a name. 11, okay? There's a name. So it's like a friend, even like a family member. So this is for trust building and build a relationship and long-term engagement. So the identity cues will generate mindful anthropomorphism, thereby increasing users' sense of the emotion, connection, and satisfaction with the company. And the other thing is, ultimately, there is a higher likelihood of user engagement and online purchase. After I know this, I didn't use Alexa anymore. I don't know. Maybe one day I may need it. But can we avoid it? Because they are moving faster than us. This is how what ChatGPT is about. Why they have the chat function. It's the voice, conversation, and engagement. So this is how I want to give you, how about the sense of social sentiment, communication, engagement, and with technological advance in digitalization. This is how generative AI competitive landscape is look like nowadays. They are moving much faster than what we can think and what we can imagine. And these are how many companies are involved, engaged nowadays in the GAI. So many new apps, new companies, new startups. So implications for governance and for sustainability. Social sentiments are enduring, socially constructed, emotional dispositions based on the potency of cultural values and ideologies. It's not something we can feel, but because of what we are embedded, then we know how to feel. That's something you may feel very pessimistic. Even your feeling is not from yourself. The other thing, while culture's ideologies may influence why host country constituents grant a firm legitimacy, social sentiments, a new construct we develop here, is to energize host country constituents to predispose shared feelings that can mobilize and amplify others' engagement. That is the power and also the legitimacy. And in a lot of the legitimation process, social sentiments does play an indispensable role. The other thing, action plans for companies. The importance of managing stakeholder social sentiments in the systems of discourse. You can see many programmers are hired. What they do is to construct and to shape the dialogues. And the other is about stakeholder engagement and enactment. I think nowadays, even CEO, top management teams, employees, they all have the chance to voice. And you can see a lot of corporate social political activism. So companies, they will have their statements to engage and also to enact to their particular group of stakeholders. Bear in mind that conversations and sentiments are a source of innovation. So to sustain in the long run in the digital economy, in fact, every data, visual, audio, they actually part of the innovation process. My last slide, remember this tree, okay? That is a quote from a dean quite several years ago that he talked about this. The winds of populism, protectionism, and in some cases, xenophobia are blowing in ways that we have not experienced in our lifetime, but in fact now we are experiencing every day. So my final word here is we are living in a world, a society, and a community of ism. So hope this journey will guide you and also stimulate you, not talk about mobilize you, your sentiments and thoughts on about how the digital economy with the use of different data, textual, visual data, and with GPI, okay, and how that actually going to change international business and also for firm legitimacy and sustainability.